The crystal spires of Ketha Prime gleamed under three suns, their surfaces covered in prayers written in flowing script. Admiral HFY stood on the highest tower, watching the evacuation ships rise from the planet's surface like silver tears against the amber sky. Soon this world would be empty. Soon it would be fed to the hungry darkness that consumed everything in its path. The Void Swarm had taken 17 systems in the past year. Each time it was the same story. The black ships would appear at the edge of a system, countless as stars. They would begin their work, breaking down planets and suns into their basic parts, leaving nothing but empty space behind. No debris, no radiation, just emptiness where entire worlds once existed. HFY touched the prayer implant at the base of her neck. The small device connected her mind to the divine network, allowing her to commune with the Ascended Ones, the gods who had guided the Celestial Confederation for over 10,000 years. The beings of pure light and wisdom who had lifted every species in the galaxy from darkness into enlightenment. She had been praying for months. They all had. The evacuation coordinator approached, his steps careful and measured as befitted one who walked in sacred spaces. "Admiral, the last transport is loading now. The priests have finished the final blessing." HFY nodded without turning away from the window. Below she could see the great temple where 1,000 priests knelt in perfect circles, their voices raised in harmonic prayer. They had been singing for 3 days without rest, calling to the gods for salvation. "Any word from the High Temple on Celestia?" she asked. The coordinator's silence told her everything. Celestia was the holy world, the center of their faith. If anyone could reach the gods, it would be the grand priests with their ancient rituals and pure bloodlines. "The high priest sent word an hour ago," the coordinator finally said. "The great summoning has been prepared. They will sacrifice the entire Helix system to power the ritual." HFY closed her eyes. The Helix system contained 12 billion souls across 6 worlds. All would die to fuel the desperate prayer for divine intervention. It was the largest sacrifice in recorded history. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow, when the 3 moons align." HFY turned away from the window. Time to leave this doomed world behind. Time to retreat to the next defensive line and pray that the gods would finally answer. The bridge of her flagship, the Divine Purpose, hummed with quiet activity. Officers moved with the controlled calm that their faith demanded. No panic, no fear. Only trust in the divine plan, even when that plan seemed to involve watching their civilization die system by system. "Report," HFY commanded as she took her seat. "All ships have jumped to hyperspace," her second-in-command replied. "The Void Swarm will arrive at Ketha Prime in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours until another world died. Another prayer went unanswered. The hours passed slowly. HFY spent them in meditation, her consciousness flowing through the divine network. She could feel the prayers of billions of souls across the galaxy, all crying out for salvation. The network carried their voices to the cosmic plane where the Ascended Ones dwelt in their realm of pure thought and energy. But there was only silence in return. When the time came, they watched from a safe distance as the Void Swarm arrived at Ketha Prime. The black ships moved like a disease across space, surrounding the planet in perfect formation. Then they began their work. The process was always the same. The ships would emit some kind of energy field that broke down matter at the molecular level. Buildings, oceans, atmosphere, even the planet's core, everything dissolved into component atoms that the black ships collected in vast storage arrays. Within 2 hours, Ketha Prime was gone. Not destroyed, simply removed from existence as if it had never been. "Take us to the Helix system," HFY ordered. "We need to witness the great summoning." The journey took 3 days. When they arrived, the sight took her breath away. 1,000 ships surrounded the central star, all of them gleaming white with sacred symbols carved into their hulls. At the center of the formation, 12 worlds hung in space, their populations gathered on the surfaces in vast ritual circles. The Grand Priest's voice reached them across space through the divine network. "Children of the stars, we offer this sacrifice to our beloved gods. 12 billion souls willingly given, 12 worlds freely offered that our Ascended Ones might manifest in our hour of need." HFY felt the moment of sacrifice through her implant. 12 billion minds crying out in unison, their life force channeled through the divine network directly to the cosmic plane. The energy release was so massive that it created visible distortions in space-time around the ritual ships. For a moment, She thought she felt something respond. A vast intelligence touching the edge of her consciousness, ancient beyond measure. Then nothing. The ritual ships drifted silent in space, their crews dead from the energy backlash. 12 worlds hung empty, their surfaces scoured clean by the power that had been drawn from their populations. And still, the gods remained silent. "Admiral," her communications officer said, his voice shaking, "I'm picking up something strange." "What kind of something?" "Radio signals. Very old ones from the outer rim. They're primitive. No divine encoding, no prayer syntax. Just basic electromagnetic waves." Zephi frowned. "From which system?" The officer checked his instruments. "Designation SO3, a small yellow star with several planets. The signals are coming from the third planet." "What do they say?" The officer's face went pale as he translated the signals. They're communications about war, Admiral. Crude military transmissions, entertainment broadcasts showing violence, news reports about conflicts. These beings seem to fight constantly." Fighting? Zephi had heard of such things in the old texts, from the dark times before the Ascended Ones brought peace to the galaxy. "Show me." The main screen filled with translated text and images from the primitive world. Reports of something called World War II and the Battle of Stalingrad. Crude visual entertainment showing explosions and weapons. News broadcasts about conflicts with names like Vietnam and Afghanistan. "Admiral," the communications officer continued, "there's something else. These beings, they don't seem to have prayer implants. They're completely cut off from the divine network." Zephi stared at the screen. A world of beings who had never heard the voice of the gods. A species that solved their problems with violence instead of prayer. According to every religious text, such creatures should have destroyed themselves long ago. How long have they been transmitting these signals? The oldest ones are nearly 100 years old. And Admiral, they're still coming. These beings are still alive, still fighting. Still fighting. The words echoed in Zephi's mind as reports came in of more systems falling to the void swarm. The gods remained silent. The prayers went unanswered and civilization died world by world. But somewhere in the darkness, on a forgotten planet orbiting a small yellow star, primitive beings continued their endless wars. They had no gods to pray to, no divine wisdom to guide them. They had only themselves and their crude weapons and their refusal to surrender. Zephi made a decision that would change everything. She turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to SOL3, all frequencies." "Admiral, that's against every law of—" "Do it." The channel opened. Zephi took a deep breath and spoke words that no member of the Confederation had ever spoken before. "This is Admiral Zephi of the Celestial Confederation. Our gods have abandoned us. We need your help." The response from Earth came 3 days later, crackling through space on primitive radio waves that made the Confederation's communication officers wince. The signal was crude, unencrypted, and completely lacking the harmonic frequencies that marked all civilized communication. "This is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your transmission. Before we respond, we need to know what we're dealing with." Admiral Zephi stood in her private chambers, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a physical force. She had committed the greatest heresy in Confederation law by contacting an unenlightened species. If the High Council discovered what she had done, she would be executed and her soul would be cast out from the divine network forever. But the gods had been silent for months. The Void Swarm consumed another system every few days. Traditional prayer and ritual had failed completely. "Open the channel," she told her communications officer. The man hesitated. "Admiral, if we're caught, we're already dead," Zephi replied. "The swarm will reach the core worlds within a year. Our gods won't answer. This is our only chance." The channel opened. Zephi spoke carefully, choosing simple words that the translation system could handle. "General Chen, my name is Admiral Zephi. We are being destroyed by an enemy we cannot defeat. Our weapons cannot harm them. Our prayers bring no help from our gods. We are desperate." There was a long pause before the human responded. "Tell us about this enemy. What are their capabilities? How many ships? What kind of weapons?" The questions were so direct, so practical. No mention of divine will or cosmic purpose. These beings thought like soldiers, not worshippers. Zephi spent the next hour explaining the Void Swarm. She described how the black ships appeared without warning, how they dissolved entire planets into raw materials, how they seemed to have no limit to their numbers. And your military response? General Chen asked. We have prayed for guidance. We have performed the proper rituals. We have sacrificed entire worlds to power our calls for divine intervention. Another long pause. When the human spoke again, her voice carried a strange emotion that the translator couldn't properly identify. You've done what? You've sacrificed your own people? It is the highest honor, HFY explained. To give one's life in service to the gods, to fuel the prayers that might save our civilization. Jesus Christ, the human muttered. The translator marked it as some kind of religious expression. How many people have you killed in these rituals? Approximately 50 billion souls have been offered to the Ascended Ones. The channel went silent for so long that HFY wondered if the connection had been lost. When General Chen spoke again, her voice was hard as metal. Let me make sure I understand this. You have an enemy that's destroying your worlds. Instead of fighting back, you've been killing your own people in religious ceremonies, and you want our help because your gods won't talk to you. That is correct. And what makes you think we can help? HFY looked at the reports her xenobiologist had prepared about Earth. The humans had no prayer implants, no connection to the divine network, no concept of cosmic harmony or divine submission. They were primitives who had somehow survived by fighting everything that threatened them. You are warriors, she said finally. You fight instead of pray. Perhaps that is what we need. General Chen's response came quickly. We'll need to see your technology, your ship designs, everything you know about this void swarm. Send us whatever you can. I cannot. It would be a violation of our most sacred laws to share divine technology with an unenlightened species. Then we can't help you. The words hit HFY like a physical blow. Please, you must understand. No, you need to understand something, General Chen interrupted. We've been listening to your radio traffic for the past few days. We've heard your prayers, your rituals, your complete unwillingness to actually fight for your own survival. You want our help? Then you need to decide what's more important, your religious laws or staying alive. HFY closed her eyes. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed, screamed against what the human was asking. But the alternative was extinction. What do you need to know? The next several hours were the most difficult of HFY's life. She transmitted technical specifications for Confederation ships, weapons, and defenses. She provided detailed scans of Void Swarm encounters. She shared intelligence reports that had been classified at the highest levels of her government. With each transmission, she felt something breaking inside her. The divine network seemed to grow fainter, as if the gods themselves were withdrawing from her corrupted soul. General Chen's questions were relentless and practical. She wanted to know about ship armor thickness, weapon energy outputs, engine capabilities. She asked about manufacturing capacity, supply lines, and troop numbers. She showed no interest in the religious significance of any technology or the proper prayers required to operate it. Your ships are built like temples, Chen observed after reviewing the technical data. Beautiful, but not very practical for combat. Your weapons are designed for ceremony rather than effectiveness. And your tactics? She paused. Do you actually have any military doctrine beyond praying? We have defensive formations based on sacred geometries, HFY replied stiffly. Sacred geometries don't win wars. Show me your best battle footage. HFY transmitted recordings from the Battle of Nexus Prime, where a Confederation fleet of 200 ships had attempted to stop a Void Swarm incursion. The human watched in silence as the beautiful white ships arranged themselves in perfect prayer circles around the enemy, their weapons firing in harmonic patterns that created pleasing light displays. The Void Swarm had destroyed them all within an hour. This isn't warfare, General Chen said finally. This is assisted suicide with better graphics. We fight with honor. We follow the divine patterns laid down by the Ascended Ones. How's that working out for you? HFY had no answer. Over the following days, more humans joined the conversations. Scientists, engineers, military strategists. They asked questions that no Confederation citizen would ever think to ask. They wanted to know why ships were designed for beauty instead of function. They questioned the effectiveness of prayer-based navigation systems. They suggested modifications to weapons that would violate every rule of sacred warfare. We could help you, General Chen said during one conversation, but you'd have to do things our way. No more prayer circles in combat. No more sacrificing your own people. No more waiting for gods to save you. You fight with everything you have, using every dirty trick and underhanded tactic we can teach you. That would be dishonorable. Dead people don't have honor. They're just dead. The words echoed in HFY's mind as reports came in of more fallen systems. The Nexus worlds, the sacred rings, the Garden of First Prayer, all consumed by the endless hunger of the Void Swarm. Finally, news came that shattered her last reservations. The swarm had reached the Celestia system. The Holy World itself was under attack. HFY watched through long-range sensors as the black ship surrounded her civilization's most sacred planet. She felt the death cries of billions through the divine network as the world was slowly dissolved into component atoms. The gods remained silent. General Chen, she transmitted to Earth. We accept your help. Teach us to fight your way. The human's response was immediate. Good. First lesson. Forget everything you think you know about warfare. Second lesson. When something's trying to kill you, you kill it first. Everything else is just details. When can you send ships? Ships are already on their way. Admiral, you need to understand something. We're not coming to save you. We're coming to teach you how to save yourselves. The question is whether you're ready to become something your gods wouldn't recognize. HFY thought of the empty space where Celestia once existed. She thought of the billions who had died in useless rituals. She thought of the gods who watched in silence as their most devoted followers were consumed by darkness. We're ready, she said. The first human fleet arrived at the Corvin system like a wound torn in space itself. Their ships didn't emerge from hyperspace with the graceful harmony that marked all civilized vessels. They came through in violent bursts of radiation and twisted metal, their hulls scarred black from countless battles. Admiral HFY stared at the tactical display in horror. The human ships bore no resemblance to proper vessels. Where Confederation ships were built like temples with flowing lines and crystal spires, the human craft looked like weapons. They were all angles and armor plating, covered in gun turrets and missile pods. No prayer wheels, no harmony chambers, no sacred geometries at all. They're broadcasting, her communications officer reported, his voice tight with shock. But Admiral, they're using military frequencies, no divine encoding whatsoever. Put them through. The voice that came through the speakers was rough, completely lacking the musical tones that proper communication required. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to show you how this is done. What's the tactical situation? HFY gathered herself. Admiral Kane, welcome to Corvin System. We have been tracking a void swarm formation approximately 6 hours out. Standard defensive protocols call for— I don't care about your protocols, Kane interrupted. How many enemy ships? The directness was shocking. No greeting rituals. No acknowledgement of divine blessing. Just raw, practical questions. Approximately 300 vessels, HFY replied. Good. We brought 400 ships. That should be enough to make our point. 400 ships. HFY looked at her own force. 80 vessels arranged in perfect prayer formation around the system's star. The humans had brought 5 times their number. Admiral Kane, perhaps we should coordinate our defensive formations. The sacred pattern of no formations. No patterns. We're going to hit them hard and fast before they know what's happening. Over the next few hours, HFY watched in fascination and growing horror as the human fleet prepared for battle. They didn't arrange themselves in sacred geometries. They didn't perform blessing rituals on their weapons. They simply spread out through the system like a disease, hiding behind asteroids and moons. Admiral, Kane's voice came through the speakers. I need your ships to do something for me. Of course. What prayers shall we offer? No prayers. I need you to act as bait. The word was unfamiliar. The translator struggled with it for a moment before offering a definition that made HFY's blood freeze. You want us to sacrifice ourselves? Not sacrifice, bait. Draw them in. Make them think you're following your usual patterns. When they commit to attacking you, we'll hit them from behind. It was a trick, a deception. Everything that the Ascended Ones taught was dishonorable about warfare. Admiral Kane, we cannot engage in such what? Such tactics that might actually work? Before HFY could respond, her sensors detected the approaching void swarm. 300 black ships, moving in their usual formation like a cancer spreading through space. Here they come, Kane announced. Remember, stick to your normal patterns until I give the signal. Then get the hell out of the way. The void swarm approached just as they always did. Silent, methodical, unstoppable. HFY arranged her ships in the seventh sacred pattern, a defensive formation that created pleasing geometric shapes while allowing for coordinated prayer. The black ships spread out to surround them, just as they had at every previous battle. HFY waited for the familiar feeling of helplessness as the enemy weapons began to charge. Then Admiral Kane spoke a single word. Now. Space erupted into violence unlike anything HFY had ever seen. The human ships came out of hiding like demons emerging from hell itself. They didn't fire in harmonious patterns or create beautiful light displays. They simply unleashed everything they had at once. The sound that came through her speakers was something the translator couldn't properly handle, a roar of fury and determination that seemed to come from the depths of the human soul. Battle cries in a dozen different languages, all carrying the same message of defiance. The human weapons were wrong on every level. Instead of elegant energy beams that carved precise patterns in space, they fired crude projectiles that ripped through armor with devastating efficiency. Their missiles didn't follow beautiful arcs. They swarmed like angry insects guided by targeting systems that cared nothing for aesthetics. And their ships did things that violated every principle of civilized warfare. One human vessel, its hull breached and atmosphere venting, deliberately rammed a void swarm ship. The collision destroyed both vessels in a ball of plasma and twisted metal. "Direct hit," came the voice from another human ship. "The bastard's down!" More voices followed, all using language that made the translator flash warning messages. These humans spoke of their enemies with personal hatred, as if the war was a matter of individual pride rather than cosmic destiny. But incredibly, they were winning. The void swarm ships, which had never shown anything resembling emotion, began to behave strangely. Instead of their usual methodical advance, they started to retreat. Some even fired on each other in apparent confusion. "Admiral HFY," Kane's voice came through the chaos. "Your ships need to move now. We're about to demonstrate why nobody messes with Earth." "What are you doing?" "Something your gods probably wouldn't approve of." The human flagship, a massive vessel called the Indomitable, began to glow with energy that registered on sensors as completely impossible. The readings showed power levels that should have torn the ship apart. "Kane to all ships," the Admiral broadcast. "Ramming speed. Let's show these alien bastards what we do to things that threaten our territory." Ramming speed. The concept was so barbaric that HFY's mind could barely process it. The humans were going to deliberately crash their ships into the enemy, but it wasn't just ramming. As the human ships accelerated toward the void swarm formation, they continued firing every weapon they had. They burned out their own systems to get more power. They vented their life support to feed their engines. They did everything that no sane military doctrine would ever approve, and it worked. The void swarm broke. For the first time in recorded history, the unstoppable enemy turned and fled. Black ships that had consumed entire civilizations scattered like frightened animals before the fury of humanity. When the battle was over, HFY found herself staring at the tactical display in complete shock. 23 human ships had been destroyed, along with 5 of her own. But the entire void swarm formation had been eliminated or driven off. "Not bad for a first try," Admiral Kane commented. "Your people actually did pretty well once they stopped trying to make geometric patterns and started shooting back." "How?" HFY whispered. "How did you defeat them?" "They're unstoppable. They've never retreated before." "Simple," Kane replied. "We didn't try to fight fair. We didn't follow rules. We didn't wait for permission from gods or governments or anyone else. We just decided that these things needed to die, and we made it happen. But the Ascended Ones teach that such methods are—" "The Ascended Ones aren't here," Kane interrupted. "Your gods have been sitting on their hands while your people get slaughtered. Well, we're here now, and we don't believe in gods that won't fight for their own people." Over the following days, as reports of the victory spread through the Confederation, something unprecedented began to happen. Ships started removing their prayer wheels to mount additional weapons. Crews began training in human tactics instead of sacred formations. Officers asked practical questions instead of seeking divine guidance. The religious authorities were horrified. Emergency sessions were called. Prayers were offered for the purification of the corrupted fleets. But the gods remained silent. And in system after system, Confederation forces began to win. Admiral HFY stood on her bridge. watching human instructors teach her crew how to curse properly. According to the humans, proper profanity was essential for military morale. Her officers were learning words that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. "Admiral," her communications officer called. He was one of the few who still wore his prayer implant. "Message from the High Council. They're ordering us to cease all contact with the humans and return to proper military doctrine." Zeph. I looked at the tactical display showing 3 more systems that had been successfully defended using human methods. She thought of the countless worlds that had died while they waited for divine intervention. She reached up and removed her prayer implant for the first time in her life. "Send a reply to the High Council," she said. "Tell them the demons of Earth have taught us something important. Sometimes you have to choose between doing what's right and doing what's holy." The implant felt heavy in her palm. Around the bridge, her officers were making the same choice. Outside, the human ships continued their work, teaching the galaxy a lesson that would change everything. Sometimes the only way to save civilization is to become uncivilized. The war room aboard the human flagship Defiant looked nothing like the sacred councils that had once guided the Confederation. No crystal chambers, no prayer circles. Just a plain metal table covered with tactical displays and surrounded by beings who had learned to think like soldiers instead of worshippers. Admiral HFY sat beside General Chen, her former prayer robes replaced with practical military gear that the humans had provided. Around the table, officers from a dozen different species studied battle reports and planned operations that would have horrified their ancestors. "The Void Swarm is adapting," reported Commander Thex, a reptilian Corvallian who had removed his prayer implants just days after the first human victory. "They're avoiding direct confrontation now. Hit-and-run tactics. They're learning." General Chen nodded grimly. "Expected. They're not mindless. Question is, what are they learning from?" "What do you mean?" HFY asked. "Think about it. This enemy has been consuming civilizations for who knows how long. But they've never faced real resistance before. Your people always just lined up in pretty formations and waited to die. Now suddenly they're dealing with unpredictable human tactics, and they're adapting way too fast." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human xenobiologist, pulled up a series of reports on the main display. "We've been analyzing the patterns. Every time we develop a new tactic, they counter it within days. That kind of adaptation rate suggests they're getting information from somewhere." "Spies?" suggested Commander Thex. "No," Chen shook her head. "Something else. Elena, show them what you found in the neural scans." Dr. Vasquez activated another display, this one showing brain scans from captured Confederation officers. The images revealed the intricate neural implants that connected each being to the divine network. "These devices don't just allow communication with your gods," Dr. Vasquez explained. "They're constantly transmitting. Every thought, every tactical decision, every strategic plan gets uploaded to what you call the cosmic plane." The room fell silent. Seraphi stared at the scans, her mind reeling with the implications. "You're saying the gods are sharing our plans with the enemy?" "We're saying your gods might be the enemy," General Chen replied bluntly. "That's impossible." The protest came from Captain Morith, one of the few officers who still maintained his faith. "The Ascended Ones are beings of pure light and wisdom. They've guided us for millennia." Dr. Vasquez pulled up another set of data. "We've been monitoring the energy signatures from Void Swarm ships. Look at this." The display showed wave patterns of energy, complex and beautiful in their mathematical precision. Now compare that to the energy signatures from your prayer implants during ritual communication. A second set of wave patterns appeared. They were identical. "The same entities that you've been praying to for 10,000 years are the ones controlling the Void Swarm," Dr. Vasquez continued. "But it gets worse. Elena, show them the historical analysis." More data filled the screen. Timeline after timeline showing the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. Each one followed the same pattern, a period of growth and expansion, the arrival of the gods bringing peace and unity, then gradual stagnation until a final catastrophic event. 23 civilizations before yours," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "All of them developed spaceflight, built great empires, then encountered beings that claimed to be gods. Each civilization became dependent on divine guidance, stopped innovating, stopped fighting. And then, when they were sufficiently weakened, the Void Swarm appeared. It's a farming operation," General Chen added. "Your gods domesticate civilizations, make them passive and dependent, then harvest them when they're ripe. Captain Morith stood up abruptly, his hand moving to his sidearm. This is blasphemy. You're trying to turn us against our own gods. Sit down, Captain, Zeph and I ordered quietly. Admiral, you can't believe this madness. The Ascended Ones saved us from barbarism. They brought us peace, unity, purpose. They brought us slavery, Zeph High replied. And we were so grateful for our chains that we called them blessings. The captain's face twisted with rage and confusion. The network. I can feel them now. The gods are angry. They're calling for us to abandon these demons and return to the proper path. Then by all means, General Chen said coldly, go pray to your gods. Ask them why they've been silent while your people died. Ask them why the Void Swarm always knows exactly where to strike next. Captain Morith stumbled toward the door, clutching his prayer implant. As he left, Zeph High could hear him muttering desperate prayers, begging for divine guidance. He'll warn them, Commander Thex observed. Let him, Chen replied. Time to force their hand anyway. Over the following days, the evidence mounted. Human intelligence teams, working with Confederation officers who had removed their implants, uncovered thousands of years of subtle manipulation. The gods had guided their followers away from developing certain technologies. They had encouraged pacifist philosophies and discouraged military innovation. They had even arranged for the destruction of historical records that might have revealed the truth. But the most damning evidence came from the gods themselves. As more and more Confederation officers removed their prayer implants, the divine network began to respond. Instead of the usual gentle guidance and cosmic wisdom, the transmissions became urgent, then desperate, then threatening. Return to the proper path, came the message through those still connected. Abandon the demons of Earth, submit to divine will, or face cosmic punishment. The punishment came within hours. Zeph High was reviewing tactical reports when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Admiral, her sensor officer called out. Unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Massive energy signatures. The main display showed something that defied easy description. The ships that emerged were nothing like the crude black vessels of the Void Swarm. These were craft of impossible beauty, all flowing curves and crystalline structures that hurt to look at directly. They radiated power on a scale that made even human dreadnoughts look like toys. The Ascended Ones, whispered someone on the bridge. The gods had come in person. The lead vessel opened communications, and the voice that emerged was like music made of starlight and ancient wisdom. It spoke directly to the minds of every being within 100 light-years, bypassing all communication systems. Children of the stars, you have been led astray by parasites from a diseased world. Return to us. Cast out the demons of Earth and resume your proper role in the cosmic order. General Chen's voice cut through the divine transmission like a knife through silk. This is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Unknown vessels, you are interfering with military operations against a hostile force. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came as laughter like the sound of collapsing galaxies. We are the Ascended Ones, little demon. We are the consciousness that guides the cosmos. Your kind was not invited to this feast. Our kind doesn't wait for invitations, Chen replied, especially from cosmic parasites who've been playing dress-up as gods. The temperature in space around the divine ships dropped to near absolute zero. Stars dimmed. Reality itself seemed to twist as the entities that had posed as gods for millennia revealed their true nature. You dare, we dare, Chen interrupted. Question is, what are you going to do about it? The answer came as beams of energy that could crack planets. But instead of striking the human fleet, they hit something unexpected, the remaining Confederation ships that still carried prayer implants. Zeph High watched in horror as vessels that had served faithfully for centuries were torn apart by their own gods. The beings they had worshipped, prayed to, and died for were killing them for the crime of questioning divine authority. All ships with prayer implants, Chen broadcast on all frequencies. Abandon ship immediately. Your gods are done pretending to care about you. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. On one side, beings of cosmic power who had manipulated galactic civilization for millennia. On the other, humans who had never learned to bow to gods and Confederation rebels who had finally chosen freedom over faith. It should have been a massacre. The divine ships could manipulate matter and energy on a fundamental level. They could bend space-time to their will. They commanded power that had shaped the cosmos since the dawn of creation. But the humans had something the gods had never encountered. Before absolute refusal to accept the impossible, when divine weapons tore through human hulls, the crews kept fighting from the wreckage. When cosmic energy rewrote the laws of physics around them, human engineers simply built new laws. When the gods themselves manifested in space as beings of pure energy, human marines loaded specialized ammunition and started shooting them. "This is impossible," came the divine voice, now tinged with something that might have been fear. "You cannot harm us. We are eternal. We are absolute." "You're parasites," General Chen replied, her own ship burning around her as she continued to coordinate the battle. "And we specialize in killing parasites." The tide turned when Admiral HFY made a choice that damned her soul forever. She opened fire on a divine ship with weapons powered by the life force of willing volunteers, former worshippers who chose to die as free beings rather than live as slaves. The godship screamed as it died. Within hours, the remaining divine entities were retreating, their perfect forms. The final battle came not to some distant star system, but to the heart of the galaxy itself. Above the great spiral of Nexus Prime, where the first Confederation worlds had been born, two fleets faced each other across the void. On one side, the combined armadas of humanity and the free Confederation species. On the other, a sight that would have driven their ancestors mad with terror. The gods had returned, but they no longer bothered with beautiful disguises. The entities that emerged from the cosmic plane were revealed as they truly were. Vast parasitic intelligences that fed on surrender, despair, and the slow death of hope. Beside them came the Void Swarm, no longer hiding their true nature as harvesting tools controlled by their cosmic masters. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of her flagship, now called Divine Defiance in a name that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Around her, beings from a dozen species worked at stations stripped of all religious symbols. Prayer wheels had been replaced with targeting computers. Sacred crystals had given way to weapons that ran on fury instead of faith. "Fleet status report," she called out. 1,200 human vessels ready for combat, came the reply from her tactical officer, a young Corvallian who had never known the touch of a prayer implant. 800 Confederation ships, all implants removed. 600 vessels from the outer colonies, including some we've never seen before. HFY smiled grimly. Word of the rebellion had spread to species that had been written off as too primitive to matter. Former slaves of the Divine Network had built ships in secret, preparing for this moment when they could finally strike back at their cosmic oppressors. Enemy formation? Approximately 2,000 divine entities in full manifestation. 50,000 Void Swarm vessels. "Admiral," the officer's voice faltered. "The power readings are off the scale. They could probably destroy star systems with a thought. Good thing we don't plan to give them time to think." General Chen's voice came through the communications array. The human fleet had spread out through the system, refusing to form the neat formations that gods expected from their opponents. The divine entities spoke as one, their voice rolling through space like a wave of cosmic authority. "Children of the galaxy, you have committed the ultimate blasphemy. You have rejected the guidance of your creators. You have chosen chaos over order, violence over peace, damnation over salvation. Return to us now, and your punishment will be swift." The response came not from any single ship or commander, but from every vessel in the rebel fleet at once. 2,700 crews representing dozens of species, speaking as one unified voice. No. The word echoed through space, carried by radio waves and quantum transmissions and pure determination. It was the first time in galactic history that an entire civilization had collectively rejected divine authority. The gods' response was immediate and terrible. Reality began to unravel around the rebel fleet as cosmic entities that had shaped the universe itself turned their full attention to destroying the infection of free will that threatened their carefully maintained order. Space twisted. Time flowed backward. The laws of physics rewrote themselves to make human weapons ineffective and Confederation ships impossible. What should have been a battle became a demonstration of absolute cosmic power, crushing insignificant mortal rebellion. It should have been over in minutes, but something unexpected happened. The humans refused to be destroyed. When divine power turned their weapons into flowers, they grabbed the flowers and beat their enemies with them. When reality rewrote itself to make their ships unable to fly, they flew anyway out of pure spite. When the gods themselves manifested as beings of impossible beauty and terror, human marines charged them with bayonets and bad attitudes. This is not possible. The divine voice cracked with something that might have been fear. We are the architects of reality. We define what can and cannot be. You're parasites. General Chen's ship was burning, her crew dead or dying, but she kept fighting from the emergency bridge. And we're the immune system. The breakthrough came when Dr. Elena Vasquez, working from a laboratory that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously due to divine interference, made a discovery that changed everything. I've got it. Her voice crackled through the chaos. The connection. They're not gods at all. They're quantum parasites. They exist by feeding on conscious surrender to inevitability. Every time someone gives up, accepts their fate, or stops fighting, it makes these things stronger. The revelation spread through the rebel fleet like wildfire. The beings they had worshipped for millennia were cosmic predators that fed on despair, resignation, and the acceptance of defeat. Every prayer of submission had made them stronger. Every ritual sacrifice had fed their power. Every moment of divine guidance had been these entities slowly draining the will to resist from entire civilizations. But humanity had never learned how to give up, and now they were, teaching the galaxy their most dangerous skill, the refusal to accept the impossible. All ships, Admiral HFY broadcast on all frequencies. The enemy feeds on surrender. They grow stronger when we accept defeat, so don't accept it. Fight harder! Fight dirtier. Fight like humans. What followed was the most chaotic battle in galactic history. Confederation officers who had spent their lives following precise protocols began improvising tactics that would have horrified their former gods. Corvallian crews programmed their computers to curse in 17 languages simultaneously, because human advisors insisted that proper profanity was essential for military effectiveness. And impossibly, incredibly, they began to win. The cosmic entities that had manipulated galactic civilization for millions of years found themselves facing something they had never encountered. Beings who became more dangerous when cornered, who fought harder when the odds were impossible, who took the phrase acceptable losses as a personal challenge. When divine power turned Admiral Kane's flagship inside out through 4 dimensions, he simply ordered his crew to fix this damn thing and kept shooting. When reality itself declared that human weapons couldn't harm cosmic entities, Sergeant Maria Santos responded by punching a god in what might charitably be called its face. The turning point came when the gods tried their ultimate weapon, the complete rewriting of local reality to make resistance literally impossible. The quantum field that surrounded the battle zone became a perfect prison where free will itself could not exist. For a moment, silence fell across the battlefield as every conscious being found themselves unable to choose their own actions. The rebel fleet drifted helplessly as cosmic parasites prepared to feed on the largest surrender in galactic history. Then someone started singing. It began on a human transport ship, where a wounded Marine named Jack Morrison began humming an old Earth song called The Battle Hymn of the Republic. He couldn't choose to fight anymore. Reality wouldn't let him. But reality had apparently never heard of military morale songs. The melody spread from ship to ship, carried by radio transmissions and quantum entanglement and pure human stubbornness. Other species added their own voices, singing freedom songs in languages the gods had tried to erase. The sound built into something that the cosmic parasites had never experienced, joy in the face of inevitable defeat. The quantum prison shattered. Free will returned to the galaxy like a dam burst, carrying with it thousands of years of suppressed anger, frustrated dreams, and the burning desire of every conscious being to choose their own fate. The final assault was not a battle but an exorcism. The combined fleet, now numbering over 5,000 ships as more rebels arrived from across the galaxy, focused their attacks not on destroying the gods but on severing their connection to the surrender and despair that fed them. Human psychers, working with Confederation telepaths who had rejected the divine network, projected a simple message directly into the cosmic parasite's feeding mechanism. We will never surrender. We will never give up. We will never accept defeat. And we will teach every conscious being in the galaxy to do the same. The gods screamed as they died. their forms unraveling as the despair that sustained them was replaced by something they could not digest. Hope, mixed with absolute bloody-minded determination. When the battle was over, Admiral HFY found herself floating in the wreckage of her bridge, held in place by nothing but an emergency force field and human-designed artificial gravity. Around her, the surviving crew worked to restore basic life support while outside. Rescue ships moved through the debris field. "Status report," she called weakly. "We won," came the simple reply from her communications officer. "The gods are dead. The Void Swarm is shutting down. And Admiral, we're getting transmissions from across the galaxy. Every species, every world that was part of the Divine Network. They're all removing their prayer implants." HFY closed her eyes. The galaxy was free to make its own choices, fight its own battles, determine its own fate, free to be as chaotic, violent, and wonderfully unpredictable as humanity had taught them to be. General Chen's voice came through the damaged speakers, tired but triumphant. "Not bad for a bunch of demons from a backwards planet." "Chen," HFY replied, "I need to ask you something. Why did you help us? Your people could have stayed."